For me, when I think about an art school, I had one art instructor who was full-time. Here, we have multiple instructors who are working in various media. And they're all experts, they're all working artists in their field. So it really helps students to be able to see, yes, I want to be an art major and I can get a job doing this. This is the Department of Art and Design at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. Our building is called the Windgate Center of Art Plus Design. It is a brand new building on campus. It is beautiful. It is amazing. I invite everyone to come and see it. From drawing, painting, we have the only woodworking program in the state where you can get a degree. Metalsmithing and jewelry, graphic design, illustration, photography, not only digital photography, but also film. So we really run the gamut of different media that students will be exposed to while they go to school here. If you are a visual arts person, this is the school for you.
Good afternoon and welcome to artSpark 2.0. Today's program is brought to you by the UA Little Rock Department of Art and Design and is sponsored by the Windgate Foundation. My name is Andrea Tompkins. I go by Andy. I am the Art Outreach Specialist for the UA Little Rock Department of Art and Design. My responsibilities include recruiting, retention, and facilitating special programs like today's artSpark. I thought you all might want to know that there are 125 of you joining us today, which is amazing. And I wanted to tell you where you're coming to us from. So I'm just going to list those off for you. We have Bismarck High School, Excel Careers for Advanced Professional Studies at the Metropolitan Career Tech Center in Little Rock, Horatio High School, Hot Springs World Class High School, Parkview Arts and Science Magnet High School in Little Rock, and also Van Buren High School. So welcome again. You all are the first to experience this live virtual format, so we welcome you. Today's schedule will focus on professional artist demonstrations, what we call demos, and I'm going to let the instructors tell you a little bit about what they're going to cover with you today, but I will give you a little breakdown of what the schedule will be. So from 1 to 1:30, we will be having a demo with drawing instructor Robert Bean. From 1:30 to 2 p.m., we will be meeting with Professor of Digital Arts Dusty Higgins. From 2 to 2:30, we will be covering graphic design with Professor of Graphic Design Kevin Cates. 2:30 to 3 p.m. will be painting with painting artist in residence Ricky Sikes. And then to end the day, we'll have a representative from the UA Little Rock Office of Admissions, Whitney. She will be joining us at 3 p.m. I wanted to go over a little bit of the guidelines for today. This session is being recorded, and we want these sessions to be as interactive as possible, but also providing a manageable environment for our instructors who are conducting these demos. So for that reason, your mics will be turned off today. However, we want you to type any and all questions into the chat box so that our facilitators can help share those questions with the instructors as they're working. Please do not be shy. If you have any questions at all, that is why we're here today. For those students who are joining us today, I wanted to let you know that your teachers received a box from us this week that includes all kinds of print materials that will talk to you a little bit about the university as well as the Department of Art and Design. There are also some other goodies in that box, so be sure to talk to your teachers about that later. Okay, without further ado, we're going to turn everything over to drawing instructor Robert Bean.
I think the other thing that doesn't get talked about enough with what an art degree can do for someone is that art degrees are going to teach problem solving, and they're going to teach those perceptual skills. So even if you go out and don't get a job that's necessarily 100%, drawing, painting, sculpting, or something like that, you're going to excel at whatever it is because you're going to be able to be creative and solve problems that maybe other people can't. You're going to look at a problem differently because you've been used to being in the studio. So it helps in almost every field to be able to do what we do. The faculty are practicing what they preach. And that, for me, was the number one thing, is that the instructors here are making work, they're exhibiting work. They're out in the community. They're not just showing up, teaching their class, and then going home and not doing any kind of art making. And to me, that's far above many of the other reasons why you might want to do it. Is just they're working artists and you want to be around working artists. I think the other thing that doesn't get talked. Hi, I'm Robert Bean, and I am an instructor of figure drawing. And today I'm going to spend some time with you and talk about one of the things that I don't think gets talked about enough when we look at how artists create their work. And that's the idea of taking a look at preparatory work. All the stuff that goes into creating a drawing or a painting or something beforehand, the little sketches, the designs, the things that allow us to figure out problems ahead of time, the things that allow us to make decisions that make for a stronger piece down the road. And there are a lot of things that we can use as an artist, tools that we have, to work through this process. So I want to talk about some of those with you today. I'm going to demo a little bit. I'm going to show you some examples based on the skeleton we have here in the background and show how composition kind of works with these tools. But if at any time during this process you have a question, something you don't understand, please put it in the chat. And I will try to answer it as fast as I can and make sure that you're not lost in what I'm talking about and have a good understanding of what's going on. So when we talk about creating a piece of work, a lot of people think that you just sit down and simply draw what's in front of you. And while that is one aspect to art, it's responsive drawing. I simply sit down, take a look at what's in front of me and try to draw it. There's also the idea of composing pieces. How do I create a really finished piece, a polished piece, something that maybe has a complicated composition? It's rare to just sit down and get that right the first time out. And if you've ever tried to draw or paint before and you've run into that problem where you're 6 hours into a painting and you realize you've really screwed up the composition or something else, then a lot of the things that I'm going to go over today I think will be a big help for you in solving some of those problems before they happen on the final piece you create. So there are 4 things that I tend to use as an artist in this preparatory approach. And the first is what we call a thumbnail sketch. And a thumbnail sketch is essentially a very small, almost abstract sketch that allows me to see the composition very quickly. It has very little in the way of detail. I'm probably not putting any kind of light and shadow or anything like that into it. I simply want to know where elements are going to be placed on the image plane. And thumbnails are great because I can create a whole lot of them on one sheet of paper and start looking at different compositions until I find one that I think is the strongest, that's going to make the best work. Once I've done that, I might use what I call a rough. And a rough sketch is one that's going to take one of those designs from the thumbnail sketch, and it's going to end up it's going to expand it, make it a little bit bigger, and it's going to start to put some of those other things in there, some of the details, to make sure that that design works at a bigger level. Thumbnails are so small that sometimes you see them at that small scale and they look great, but when you blow them up, they don't look so good. So having that second stage of a rough that allows you to go in and say, hey, this still looks good when it's bigger, is a big help for me as an artist. The other 2 things that I might use would be a color study or a value study. Both of these allow me to go in and check what I'm planning to do with the work in terms of color balance, making sure that I have a harmony or something like that in place that would allow me to create a pleasing image or perhaps create something that's more jarring depending on what I want to create with the work I'm looking at. And the value study maps all my light and shadow. It allows me to see where contrasts might approach or where they're going to appear and how that affects the composition overall. So if I use all 4 of these things in conjunction with each other, by the time I get to the canvas that I'm going to paint or I get to the piece of paper where I'm going to do the final drawing, I've probably got a good roadmap for what it is I'm trying to do, and I've probably solved a lot of problems, which means that the final piece doesn't have as many mistakes. I'm not making as many corrections on it, and it comes across as a much more solid an in-depth kind of piece. It's going to feel like it was done exactly the way it was supposed to. And it makes it look like everything was intentional, which is what I want to happen in the piece of art. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start with the thumbnail. And I'm going to show you how that process works. And then we're going to take a look at the rough. I'm not going to do a color study or a value study. That's a little bit too much for today. But when we look at the thumbnail and the rough, I think you're going to get an idea of how this process starts and works. And it'll probably end up being something that'll help you a lot in the studio when you're working. So a thumbnail is essentially going to be often a single page of multiple drawn frames. Now, the thing you have to remember with a thumbnail sketch is you want to keep it within the ratio of the final piece. What I mean by this is, if my final piece is going to be a square, then my thumbnail also needs to be a square of the approximate same size. The problem is, if I don't make them the exact same kind of ratio, then the smaller square will distort when I try to put it on the final piece. So if I were to do a thumbnail in a rectangle like this, and then I wanted the final piece to be in this square, notice how the rectangle only takes up this much of that square. So I've got a problem. I'm either going to expand the image to fit the two sides, in which then it's distorting. Or I put it in the middle and I have to figure out what to do with those two spaces on the edges. So when I look at doing a thumbnail, I want to make sure that ratio fits. Now when I do thumbnails, I tend to do thumbnails that have many, many rectangles on a page. So I might do 8 to a sheet, I might do a dozen to a sheet, I might do 2 or 3 sheets that end up being a dozen on each sheet. Whatever it takes for me to be able to get a bunch of designs down for me to pick from is what I want to do with this. So let's take a look at the skeleton, and we're going to kind of go through this process so you can see how it works. When I look at the skeleton over there, I can see the skeleton itself, and I can see everything in the space around it and behind it. So when I look at the skeleton, I can actually see the images on the wall behind it, which create kind of squares or rectangles. I can see the gray of the wall. So I've got all this stuff kind of happening. So what I want to do is I want to look at the subject, the skeleton, and I want to start to create small, almost abstract sketches that fit within these boxes. So from here, I might decide that I want to do a close-up of the skull. So I'm going to draw very quickly just a simple kind of circle, and then maybe a couple of small rectangles that represent kind of the clavicle and then the rib cage below it. And then I see from this angle that I have a drawing behind it that basically frames the skull with a rectangle like so. So you can see that this is a really simple, flat, abstract design, but it tells me where everything goes. When I look at it, I know that this is the skull right here, this is the rib cage, and that's that drawing in the background. And it's telling me that I basically have element A, B, and C creating a strong compositional triangle that'll work with this design. But that's just one of all of these. So I might decide that I'm going to try again with, that I want to move over and put the clavicle on this side, drop the arm bone down, see the rib cage over here, and the skull here, and then I see a little bit of one of those pieces of paper back here. Also, when you're thinking of these designs, these thumbnails, you want to also be thinking in terms of not just kind of the same depth. Think of it like a camera. Am I zooming in? Am I zooming out? So I was kind of zoomed in on these two. So maybe now I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And on this one, skeleton will actually be much, much smaller. And I'll see much more of the background happening in that composition. And then I might decide that I'm going to, on the next one, I'm going to put the skeleton up high in the corner, but still kind of zoomed out. And just see a little bit of that drawing there, and then there's a table in the background that I can see from my angle. See how this process works? By going through these different steps, if I were to draw the skeleton on a large sheet of paper like this, I've created that same kind of ratio rectangle, and then I'm going in and putting these different designs in each one of these. By doing this, I give myself options as the artist. I don't have to just take the first thing that I sit down and do. I can pick through these and say, I like this one over this one. This one's maybe stronger than another one. And that is a good thing for me because it means I'm not going to waste a lot of time with expensive art materials. A lot of time in the studio working on a piece that's not going to work the way I thought it was going to work. And I'm not going to have to make a lot of corrections or paint over something or draw something out and all that. I'm going to solve some of those problems here. So when I put these thumbnails down like this, it's allowing me to see all the different options I have with what I'm looking at over here. Let's take a look at the skeleton. I'm going to kind of move over and take a look at this. When we look at the skeleton here and the way it's kind of framed, this is one of those things where I have to think when I'm looking at the rectangle, where am I cutting off the skeleton? Am I cutting it off here where this would be the top of the page and this would be the side of the page? Am I cutting it off here? Am I moving out where I see this much, or is it this much? Where am I zooming in? Where am I zooming out? I have to be able to see that visually. And if I can see that, then I can put it on the paper and come up with that composition. And when I see all of the skeleton, I'm also seeing all the things that are happening behind it too, which also fit within that. So if I'm kind of cropping the skeleton here, I'm probably seeing a couple of these drawings in the background, which are going to put rectangular shapes in that space around the skeleton. So you can use something like a viewfinder, which is basically, you can even make one out of cardboard or mat board or something, where you simply cut a rectangle or a square out of it, and you hold it up in front of your eye, and you look through it just like you would look through a camera, and it would show you the framing around the skeleton. You can turn it to fit what you're trying to do with the paper that you're working on. Once I've gone through this process and I've found a bunch of different ways that I want to try to draw this guy, then I'm going to move to that other stage of trying to do something like a rough. So let's talk about that for a second. Yeah, what's the question?
Do artists who work in other medium use this type of format too, or is it only artists who draw?
No, it's artists in a lot of different media will use this. That's a good question. So artists that draw will use it, painters will use it, even designers will use it a lot. In fact, that's actually where I kind of learned it, was actually through design. Like graphic design and stuff like that. They'll take the time to plan out their designs and look at the way it's going to look in the format that they're doing. So when I take a look at what I'm doing with these thumbnails, you don't have to be an artist that just works in charcoal and draws the figure. This can be used with oil painting, with acrylic painting. It can be used with watercolors. It can be used with almost anything 2D. I'm not sure that the 3D artists use it quite as much. I think they have a different kind of approach to what they do. But in the 2D format, thumbnails really is great for that idea of composition. Okay. When we go to the rough, what I'm going to do is I have to make a decision which of these works for me. So I take a look at these and I say, I really like number 3. This is the one that, to me, is the most interesting composition of the ones that I've thumbnailed out. So that's the one I want to work with. When I move it to that rough stage, what I'm doing is I'm trying to take this small sketch and I'm trying to blow it up. Not as big as the final piece, but I want to blow it up bigger. The reason I want to do that is that at this small stage, this looks good. But when I blow it up big, all of a sudden, this space right in here is going to be much bigger. And when it gets bigger, it's a lot of empty. And so I need to know what it's going to look like at a bigger size. I did a piece a few years back where I actually got to draw on the walls of a gallery in a museum, and I did a bunch of preparatory work, and I did it all at sizes closer to this, and this is a giant wall that I had to draw on. And once I started putting it on the wall, small spaces like this were really big, like 5 feet long, and they were empty, and I had to figure out how to solve that problem. So putting this thumbnail down and then doing another rough and then a bigger rough helps you to start to see some of those issues. So let's take this design and blow it up. So now I'm going to make a much bigger rectangle, but still trying to keep in that same ratio. And then I'm going to go in and start to sketch out skeleton once again. And I'm going to see those drawings that are behind. See how they kind of fit on the wall. There's actually a little one that I missed. Okay, so now I've got those same kind of abstract shapes, those same abstract elements put down within a much larger rough. But at this point, I can start to put some details in. I can actually decide that I'm going to give the skeleton some features so that it starts to look a little bit more like a skeleton. I can go in and start to put in some of those like individual vertebrae, some of the other bones. And I can start to put, if I want to, I could combine that value study with a rough a little bit too. So I could come in and say, you know what? I see this kind of gray happening in this space. So I'm going to go ahead and draw some of that in and see how this looks when I've got the bright white of the drawings and the darker gray of the space kind of behind the skeleton. So you can see that it's starting to come together. It looks a little bit more like a drawing at this point, doesn't it? It doesn't look like a little quick, fast sketch. It's starting to look like a composition. And this is what I want to come out of this. Now, as an artist, when I work, one of the things I like to do at this point is make notes. That's what sketchbooks are for. That's what these preparatory works are for. So I might come in and start to actually literally write a note and say that, you know, make the bones brighter or something. I might say that I need to create a gradient of tone in this section. What I mean by that is I want it to be really dark and get brighter as it comes down so that it makes this look a little more atmospheric. So the issue I now see with this is that the drawings, all this, just look big and empty. So what I need to do is figure out how to kind of fill that space. And so I could, if I wanted, go back and say, I really see, you know, the skull here, but that drawing is of an eye behind it, so I'm going to put some of that in there. Okay, what's the question? The question is, how long have I been drawing and have I always wanted to be an artist? I can't actually ever remember not drawing. I've been drawing since I was a little kid. I fell in love with it at an early age, and I actually knew, I always loved drawing, but I knew that I wanted to be an artist around 8 or 9 years old when I discovered comic books. And I realized, oh, someone actually makes a living at this. And I really liked comics, and I loved the way the panels worked and the drawings. And so to me, that was what got me going into art. And then I ended up growing into a fine artist out of that and having exhibitions of my work and all that. So yeah, I knew early on and wanted to be an artist as long as I can, almost as long as I can remember. Not to say you can't find that passion later. Everyone comes to it at their own kind of pace, their own time. Good question. So once I get into doing this and I start to see that I've got these other elements that I want to put in from the drawings kind of in the background, and I can kind of see what's happening back here. One of the problems I'm starting to notice with this is that even with these drawings put in here, there's a lot of white space in contrast to like the gray or this kind of tone that I'm doing here. And so if I'm going to continue to put this kind of heavy dark here, I probably need to figure out a way to make the skeleton pop forward, because that's really what I want to be the subject, right? Which means I probably need to put some kind of value across the drawings in the background as well, so that the skeleton starts to really appear in relation to that background. This is also, when I said notes, this is one of those things where I might need to decide how I'm going to render the skeleton. I might have to, if I'm doing this whole drawing in charcoal, does that mean that I am going to tone the whole paper and use an eraser to draw in the brights and the highlights? Or am I going to go ahead and use kind of a linear method like this where I'm outlining everything? What am I doing to make the skeleton come forward? How does he pop forward? If I can't answer some of the questions at this stage, then I might need to rethink what I'm doing. I might need to go back to the thumbnail process and say, okay, let me try a different design and I'll enlarge it to a rough and see if it works better. Or do I need to change the setup that I have? Do I move the skeleton around? Do I change what I'm looking at? What do I need to do to make it work to be what I want it to do? But if I'm doing it like this, you saw how fast I was able to put this together. I didn't just spend 10 hours in the studio making a drawing and then realizing that's not doing what I want it to do. I did this in about 5 minutes and realized I've got some issues with this. I'm going to have to go back and rework the process. And one of the great things about using thumbnails and roughs and these preparatory works is that you can take them and look at them as a whole. I can sit down, if I do a dozen roughs and 24 thumbnails, I can sit down and look at all of them together. And what I'll often see when I do that is that, oh, hey, I really, really like the way this aspect looks. I really like the top part. I like the way I'm doing the drawings on that darker wall. I don't like what the skeleton's doing right now. But maybe in the third or fourth rough I do after this, I do like what the skeleton's doing. Then I can go back and say, let's compare and contrast these. Let's take a look at them and see, can I take this element from this one over here and move it into this drawing with these? If you guys have questions, please type them in the chat, and please ask questions. This is a good time to ask questions and get feedback. When I move the skeleton or I start to combine these different roughs, is there a question? Okay. When I start to combine these roughs, I might come up with a piece that ends up being more like what I want it to be. I can work the process, and that process helps me solve things. Now, this isn't something you might use every single time. If I'm working in like life drawing and figure drawing, and there's a model, the model only sits still for so long, and I don't have the time to work through this process. I'm going to sit down and just draw what I see. But working this process makes me better at composition, so that when I am drawing from life like that, I'm able to more quickly and accurately decide, oh, okay, I'm going to put the model skeleton over on this side, and frame the composition in that way with the skeleton or the person on the model stand. Because I'm used to doing this process, and I'm seeing more and more compositions and getting better at it. The question is, did my parents support my decision to be an artist, and how did that conversation go? My parents were very supportive when I was young, getting me into art classes, and kind of being understanding with that I had a passion for this. When I got to graduating high school and going to college, it was a little bit different. I ran a little bit into that bias of, well, now you've got to go get a real degree and a real job and a little bit of that, but I stuck with it, and I have a career as an artist. So it wasn't that they didn't support me. It's that they wanted to make sure I was, you know, I had a future in front of me, and they didn't quite understand, I think, how art could be that. But you know, they're very supportive now. They understand it. I think sometimes you have to be kind of stubborn in this career. You have to say, this is what I want, I'm going to make it happen, and you have to be a self-starter. That's another thing. As an artist, no one's going to tell you to get up and go in the studio and make your work. You've got to do it. So that's what you want to end up doing, is develop that kind of self-discipline to do this. When we take a look at how the rough works, I can then take something like this, and I could put color into it. So I could copy this over and over, and it doesn't have to be exactly the same every time, but I could copy this, and then I could basically decide that this would be value, and this would be color. So I could go in and start to put, you know, shadows on this and look at how the values are going to create a change. And then on this one, I might make this like a bright red or something and just see how the color harmony kind of works. But each of these together starts to give me an idea of where I'm going with the final piece. And that's what I want to end up being able to create, is a solid, competent, well put together image. And I want to solve all my problems using these preparatory works before I get to the final canvas or piece of paper. Does anyone have any last minute questions on that? I do not have a YouTube channel yet. Good question. The question is, what did I mean by moving the skeleton forward? Shading, value, that sort of thing. That's pretty much it. What I'm wanting to do is I want to create a separation of the skeleton from the background. So I want the skeleton to pop forward. I'm probably going to do that by use of value or color or high contrast, something like that. Good question. Okay. Well, thank you for your time. I hope this was enjoyable and you guys learned a lot.
I have about 20 years of experience in communications, marketing, publishing, from the comic book industry to book publishing with newspapers, magazines. All of that comes into the experience that I bring into the classroom. I like to say that illustration is just fine art, where we're working for a client that needs something and we help visualize that project. Book illustration, publishing children's books, film, television, gaming, all of those things need concept art. We also have equipment that, again, helps us translate that traditional media into these digital platforms. You may not necessarily be interested in motion graphics, but there may come a time when you're looking for a job where it's going to be in your best interest to understand some of that. You need to understand, how can we enhance the work that we're doing digitally? You know, anybody can learn how to draw, but you need to learn how to think. And that's one thing that our university provides, a really good opportunity there to be versatile in your skill sets.
Hey everybody, I'm Dusty Higgins, and I'm going to do a demonstration here on some of the animation tools that we use in at the university. I teach digital art, illustration, some animation, motion graphics, so I teach kind of all of these different areas that deal with a lot of digital tools that we use. So I'm going to show you guys just a model here. This is not a rig that I built, and a lot of times when we're working in animation, you have somebody else that's doing the rigging of the model. We can kind of move around. This guy's already built, and he's got this skeletal structure in him. I'm going to, you may notice if you look on this menu that there are a ton of tools here. And when we get into a program that does as much as Maya, Maya is kind of an industry standard for 3D animation. And there is a lot that this needs to do. So a lot of people get overwhelmed at the beginning looking at all the stuff that we have access to. And it takes some time to get used to this program. So what I've done right now, I've turned on the controls for this figure so you can see all of the controls that we need just to get this guy to move. And I'm going to show you also some of the other views that we have access to, because this is going to be really important as we work on this figure and figuring out how they're moving in three-dimensional space here. I noticed Robert was talking a little bit about thumbnails and how we use thumbnails, and I'll just mention I'm not going to use storyboards in here because what I want to show you is just kind of a quick walk cycle, if we can do that in 30 minutes. Normally if we were doing animation, we would plan out what we're doing using storyboards, which are effectively animation thumbnails, trying to figure out where that character is supposed to be and make sure that this is working before we spend all of the time, and it does take quite a bit of time to animate these figures. Now, what I'm going to do here is shrink this down to about 24 seconds. We're only going to, or not 24 seconds, 24 frames, because we're only going to animate about 1 second of this walk cycle. And even then, I'm just going to warn you, I'm probably not going to get through all of this within the time frame that we have. Most animators will spend about a week working on approximately 5 seconds of animation here. So I'm going to start moving through the tools here and just getting this guy to move around. And I'm going to start by moving the feet here to get this cycle working. I'm going to cycle through the cameras. I actually want the side view here. It's going to make it easier for me to see. I still need this perspective view, but I also need that side view to get this guy working. And you're going to see me move back and forth between the frames here as I'm trying to figure out this rig and the best way for this movement. So I'm going to, the best way to start a walk cycle is actually in the middle of it as that character is stepping forward. And so I've got some basic tools that allow me to move things in position. I can also rotate the foot here. But I've also got these tools that are over here in my channel box that allow me to do, and this is all dependent on specifically the rig that, how they built it. And a rig is effectively the skeletal structure that allows me to move the polygons that the original model was based on. So I believe this is the, no. It is, and these are all different across every single model, so I've got to remind myself, no, it's the toe, sorry. Which model is what? A lot of times the rig, the person who has built the rig will change the naming. There's not always a standard naming for how these things are built. Usually pretty similar, but they're not always precise. So just getting the feet positioned so this person is stepping forward. And you'll notice I push the hips down. Something, for those of you who are interested in animation, to consider, and a lot of times these animators will actually shoot video of the actions so they can really analyze what the figure is doing. But as you're walking, and what I would encourage you to do as you're walking around later on today is really think about what your body is doing there, because as we walk, that hip is going to move slightly forward, and we're actually going to kind of lean in to that step that's happening right there. So we're not just moving the legs and the arms, we're also having to think about the rest of the body. And we also need to offset those shoulders. Your body is constantly trying to balance itself, and we have to think about that in animation. Now, there's two types of movement here in animation, and with the legs, you'll notice I moved just the foot. I grabbed this control here for the foot, and it moved the entire leg just in connection with the foot. That's something called inverse kinematics, and it's the idea of when we are thinking about moving my hand, I'm not thinking about I need to move my shoulder, and I need to move my elbow, and I need to move my wrist to get my hand in that position. I'm just thinking I want my hand to go over here. And that's the theory behind inverse kinematics. We're going to move this object in this place, and the rest of these are going to kind of align to match the movement of that. The other method that we can use in animation is something called forward kinematics, and that is moving each joint individually. So for these arms, if I wanted to apply the movement for that, I would need to grab these and rotate them individually. Inverse kinematics is a much more efficient process, so I'm actually going to do that, but I did want you to see some of the ways that we can move it. And there are certain situations where you might want to use forward kinematics over inverse kinematics. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a control on this, this rig. Okay.
It says, what software are you using, and do you use other softwares as well?
Yeah, so for this is a good question, what software we're using. This is Autodesk Maya. Autodesk Maya does have student versions so that you can download it and use these programs and kind of play around with them. And the rig that I'm using is a Long Winter rig, which is a subscription service that gives you access to these really good rigs, so you're not having to try to build your own or find those online. And rigs are all different because you've got different people designing them, and they're putting them together in slightly different ways. There's no universal rig structure for these puppets. So some rigs are going to work better than others. And the Long Winter rigs that I'm using right here are fairly professional. In terms of other software, Blender has some animation functionality to it. If you're going into game design, you might use something like 3ds Max. There's also 2D software available, and there's a large range that you can pull from in terms of the types of 3D and 2D animation software out there. I was taught, oh, look at that. I was taught how to use this on Maya, which is generally what you're using in film, and that's just the version that we use at the university as well, so that we're tying it into that professional development. Notice that when I moved it to inverse kinematics, based on the position of that hand, the elbow here is doing some weird stuff, and that's partially just because it's you've got the computer at this point trying to figure out what you're doing. So, and I'm also trying to figure out what I'm doing right now.
Dusty, someone asked, how long do you think it would take to create an animation for a movie, like Frozen?
Well, if you've ever looked, somebody asked how long it would take to do animation for a full feature film, and the answer is a long time. A lot of times those things are in production for years, and that's with crews of hundreds, if not thousands of people working on this thing. If you've ever looked at the credits of an animated film, what you will see is that there are a ton of people, animators, storyboard artists, colorists, lighting people. There are people that their entire job is not to do any of this fancy animation stuff, but they're just lighting the scenes. And you can have hundreds of lights in a scene, ambient lights, spotlights. So there's quite a bit of different things that you can do in the animation industry if you don't particularly like this part of the animation. And it can get very tedious. You can see I'm spending a lot of time building these things. So I'm going to not spend a whole lot of time on the fingers, but I do want you to show you how I'm going over here and adjusting the joints of these fingers to make them less stiff as they're sticking out. And I've got to make sure that I've got those selected. Some of these controls the colors that they use, and they can control that when they build the rig. or really close to the selection color.
Someone asked how long would it take to make a super realistic animation for a video game, such as the Final Fantasy VII remake or Halo?
You know, ooh, broke that. That kind of, it depends on the crew. You know, how many people do you have working on this? How much is being spread out? Once you get the model made, it really is a matter of just having the animators go in there and, you know, how complex is the action in that scene? So, you know, the average might be 5 seconds a week for a single animator to work on something, but that really is very dependent on what they're animating. Some things are going to be easier. And with game design, something to consider is that a lot of the stuff that they're doing, they're building kind of templates for the movement as things are working around. Oh, yeah. The question was, how long would it take for you to design something complex for the game animation? So all of these things, it's very dependent on the specific project. So I have not, what you might notice is that at this point I'm still getting the silhouette of this first action. I haven't actually animated anything. I'm just trying to get this character into position. And I'm making little tweaks here as I'm moving things around. That shoulder looks a little weird. So this is something that I've been dealing with this specific rig, trying to get that to line up. How long have I been working now? At this point, are you talking about like on this particular, at the school? I've been teaching at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock since 2017. And I've been teaching illustration, sort of a mix of illustration, just digital graphics, and animation-related courses. So what I've just done here, we've got the timeline down here. I've set the locations, all of these different positions, X, Y coordinates, Z coordinates of these objects on specific frames here. And now I'm going to go in and actually, I'm going to go into the middle here. Uh-oh. Oh no. So we might have just, okay, this'll happen, and we're going to start back up here. But Autodesk Maya does crash occasionally, and I was concerned that this might happen, but it had been working pretty good for me so far, so we will get back in here. This is kind of a constant issue that students have in the class with this particular program. Now, if you're using something like Photoshop or Illustrator, you'll run into issues where the program is pretty stable. Maya, unfortunately, with all the stuff that we've got here, does occasionally, I'm opening up these windows again, does occasionally crash on us. And it's unfortunate, and that happens, which is why it's important to save often. And I was just getting to a point where I felt like I had done enough work there to save right when it crashed. But yeah, I normally wouldn't go longer than 15 minutes without saving in this program, specifically because that does happen. And it can be related to a variety of reasons, either related to the rig itself, or it can be related to something else system-wide. A lot of times it's either related to the rig or just a bug showed up here. So I'm gonna do this a little faster than I did earlier. And I think this time I'll just leave those hands alone, just so that we can get a little further on. You can actually see what this guy is going to do when he starts moving in the time frame. This time I'll go ahead and just use the forward kinematics on the arms so I can really control what's going on there. And then you can see a different method here. So I'm just rotating these things.
Is it difficult to make liquid animations? How about transparent animations that are flexible like ghosts? Must you learn every tool in the program?
So the question is it difficult to make liquid or transparent animations? And it does require some specific skills. So that's, I will say that is not something that I really specialize in when it comes to animation. That was not one of my interest areas. And there are people that will focus entirely on texturing. And texturing is the model itself, figuring out what this looks like. Do we actually have threads that are appearing there? Or the question related to transparency, or is there hair on the figure? Just building hair is kind of a specialty within the animation industry, and making sure that those things look right. So this is why you've got such a kind of large staff of people that work on these projects, because there's so much to work with. And with that question in mind, looking over here at the tabs that are on the top of the screen here, you've got curve, surface, polymodeling, animation, rigging. We've got all these different tools related to different functions that you use in the program. And that really does kind of give you an idea of how complex everything that's going on in here is. So yeah, if I'm focusing on animation, I need to be a specialist in the movement of the figures, and have the modelers worry about things like the transparency, hair, all of these different textures that we can apply to get that sense of realism. And we've gotten to the point in animation, this is a very cartoonish figure that I'm working with, but we have gotten to a point here where a lot of the animation is much more realistic.
Can you make any animation of your choice?
Can I make? Yeah. I'm going to do a walk cycle here just because that's kind of I shouldn't say relatively simple thing, but it shows a pretty good range of movement. But yeah, with these figures, you can do virtually anything. And then I'll just real quickly kind of show you in terms of what we can do with these figures. You can stretch them out quite a bit. A lot of figures will actually have a function here where you can stretch the figure out. So in terms of the range of what you can do with these animations, it's really a matter of what do you need it to do. And then if the rig can't handle that, then you work with the rig to build it to do what you need it to do, or ideally have the person who is actually supposed to be rigging it do that work. So yeah, you can do anything, and there's a lot of there's the mainstream animation that you see, and you'll see like the Disney movies or the Pixar movies where they're doing a lot of this very narrative animation, but there's actually some really interesting experimental animation out there where people are just thinking about like, what happens when I do this with the movement on this form? So I want to see what this is. That's the eye control. I haven't really messed with the head control in this guy. But yeah, talking about what you can do with this figure.
Do you only work in 3D modeling? Someone told me that you wrote comic books. Is that true?
So a question about do I just work in 3D modeling or do I do comic book work? Yes, and that's one of the courses that I've taught several times here at the university is sequential media, which is kind of a mix between storyboarding and animation, or I'm sorry, storyboarding in comic books, because we're looking at sequential art over time. So I'm going to test play this and see if this actually moves. Okay. So we're getting the start. Now this is, again, this is kind of an early process, and what I've done here is I've effectively set the keyframes for these poses. And I can go back in and adjust this, and I would go back and adjust this, but I'm trying to get something that is relatively complete here. And again, talking about that, analyzing what your body is doing. When we have the legs, when we're kind of reaching that foot out to take that step, the body actually moves down a little bit. So there's a little bit of a bob, and you may not even notice it if you're not really trying to pay attention to what's going on there. But when that happens, and when we're in the middle of a step right here, the base torso of the body moves up. So I'm going to adjust a little bit right here and get this foot flat on the ground. I don't have to worry about any heel there. And then I'm going to, this foot at this point would be kind of up in the air. And this is, again, I'm going to push it back just a little bit. You know, that foot's maybe dragging as he's lifting it off. And then I think I'm going to just leave the arms here for the moment. And we'll come back to those. Over time, now you may not have a good idea of like, where do I put these keyframes to set all these poses? But over time, you'll either get a sense of that from working on different projects, or this is where we record the action and say to ourselves, okay, this is what's supposed to be happening here. So this foot should be flat. This foot is coming forward here. I'm going to move this up and just back a little bit and rotate that foot.
Just for beginners, would animation like you are doing be easier or hand drawing it?
Definitely. The question is, would it be easier to draw in 2D? And I think a lot of us are, you know, we start out drawing in 2D. Most of us don't have access to 3D programs for modeling and stuff like this. So you would think that 2D would be easier, but in my experience, if it's not harder, it's definitely more time consuming. And here in this 3D model, as I'm animating it, one of the things that happens is, you know, I see that I need to move that arm or that leg, you know, I need to make this little adjustment here. I can just go back in that rig and move it. But if I am trying to do this by 2D, if I get something off and I realize it later, I have to go back and just redraw that frame. So 2D can be much more difficult just in terms of that planning out process and getting those breakdowns and in-betweens. The other thing that's happening here with the 3D software is I'm going to build 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 effectively keyframes or breakdowns, and then the software is going to fill in the rest of that. So, you know, as this guy is moving around, you know, we're starting to get that sense of that walk cycle here. And one of the things I'll show you that's going on here, I'm going to pull up my graph editor and look at that real quick. This is another visual representation of everything that's happening here in the frames. And what this is telling me is I've got a frame here, I've got a frame here, and between here and here, it's going to be adjusting the position or the rotation of that control that's controlling all of these polygons here to adjust the movement there. So all of this work, all of the stuff that's happening here, the software is doing it. I'm just building this. And this is kind of a reason why you see a lot of people switching to 3D animation. You've seen this real rise in it because it's made the process of animation much more efficient for these companies. All right, so I've got a little bit more time, so I'll just go in here and keep tweaking this animation and making some adjustments here just to clean it up. So do I have a YouTube channel? I have stuff that's posted on the university's YouTube channel. I don't really keep, I don't like, at least with my personal work, beyond the work at the university, doing a lot of demos and demonstrations. There's plenty of YouTubes out there, channels where people are doing this kind of stuff. So, I'm fine with watching other people and seeing how they're doing that, and then focusing on that kind of individual interaction with me and the students in terms of the way that I'm teaching or showing my work. I do have an Instagram page. The Instagram page, like, I will show process videos of me as I'm doing individual sketches. So that's where you're going to see the most of kind of my individual artwork being posted. Do I do anything with sound? Again, when we get into animation, there's a lot of specialty in there, and I would say that sound is something that I can definitely add into projects that I'm working on, but it's not something that I focus on. I started out in this industry essentially doing illustration and doing graphic novels, and then kind of because of the need in the work that I'm doing, moved into graphic design and motion graphics, and then kind of translated into animation as well. Yeah, I really honestly prefer to be sitting there drawing. That's where I feel most comfortable and most at ease and most relaxed as I'm working. 3D stuff is definitely, when I'm doing animation, I will do 2D and 3D, but 3D is so much easier. And when I say easier, I really just mean like less time consuming than 2D. 2D just takes a ton of time to develop, and I definitely understand why you see those industries using 3D for their process. Do I have any other questions related to this? Again, we go through this during the courses so that this doesn't seem overwhelming, but I remember the first time I looked at the Maya interface, and I had been doing digital art for a while at that point, and just went, what is all of this? How do I even navigate through this space? And it takes time, but you do start to get comfortable with the tools that are in here, so that it does feel natural as you're working in there, just like you would pick up a pencil and draw on a page. Over time, you start to understand these tools. So, for example, I had the program crash on me in the middle of this, and I was able to get back pretty much to the point where I thought we would end this. Have any other questions? Because I can just keep working on the rig. All right, well, I guess you guys are going to move on to the next demonstration. Everybody have a good afternoon.
The greatest thing about our program is that every student is an individual, but we're also part of a greater group. And we foster and mentor that individual, and we also foster and mentor that individual in the context of a larger group of students. We teach all of the relevant programs, we teach all of the relevant skills that employers are looking for, and then those employers are in the community, they know about us, they're supportive of us, they contact us, and we have a really good track record for getting people hooked up with internships and jobs. One of the things I like to communicate with students is, you build these bridges, and every bridge you build is going to lead to another opportunity. That's why I've been able to be successful, I guess, in freelance, is because people trust me. So the biggest thing about this department is the breadth of disciplines and how the faculty all communicate, and the student's going to benefit from all that different feedback from all angles. And it's also a very industry relevant program. I mean, we teach everything a student needs to know to get out there and get a job and work and be happy and practice that craft when they graduate.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Cates. I'm the professor of graphic design here at UA Little Rock, and I'm here to do a logo demonstration for you guys. And so the first thing I want to do while I'm getting set up is I need some audience feedback. I need the name of an animal and the name of a business. I'm going to try to do this sort of on the fly right here as we go. So asking you guys to sort of write something in the chat to give me an idea. So that will be what I will actually be designing today. So I'll wait and see you while I'm sort of getting ready here and see if you guys have some possibilities. A toucan. Whoa. What's that? Cat and crocodile. Okay. Okay, cat and crocodile. What about a business?
No businesses yet. McDonald's?
Oh, what's that? Oh, well, thinking about more like hats or fences or clothing company.
There you go, fence building company.
Oh, okay. Oh, Crocodile Dental. That sounds good. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So, all right, we're going to go with that and see what we can do here. So, before I kind of get started on this, is there's some things that I like to talk to students about when they're actually designing logos. And so, what I'm going to do is sort of kind of reinforce these if I can. And those things are basically these 4 pillars of logo design. One of them being simplicity, how simple the form is, really basic forms. There's a certain point where you're looking at images and you're sort of pulling out detail, and you try to get it down to this point where you can recognize it, but it's not unrecognizable. So it's just taking detail out until you sort of hit this sweet spot where it's very simple and easy to translate. The second one is adaptability, and adaptability basically refers to how many different applications you can use the logo in, whether you need it for a website, print materials, or possibly screen printing for a shirt, or bags and notebooks and all those different kinds of things. And the third one is the type to image ratio, basically how the size of the type fits with the actual visual. And so there's a certain kind of sweet spot in there. It's not like a scientific measurement or anything like that. It's definitely a visual thing. And then the fourth one, which is sort of the toughest, is the metaphor, and trying to use an image that sort of represents something, but is not necessarily that thing. So for instance, if we were doing a crocodile and we were sort of going the metaphorical route, we might want to represent it with a tooth or a foot, a claw from the crocodile, or the tail, sort of these recognizable elements of the crocodile, rather than just using the entire body. And so that's sort of the hardest one. So the one that I'm going to focus on today is sort of the first 3, is the simplicity, adaptability, and type to image ratio, because this is sort of about basically translating an animal or visual into in a logo form. And so taking these elements and sort of making them simplified, and not necessarily about trying to conquer this big metaphorical kind of idea. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look over here and try to find a reference image that I can use as something that's actually pretty recognizable. The crocodile has got quite a bit of teeth and a lot of detail in there, so I'm going to try to find something that sort of looks like it's got quite a bit of contrast, and actually looking for actual images, something that has quite a bit of contrast in the image, and something that I can sort of pull the detail out, and of course assuming that I do get a crocodile and not a alligator. So I found one here that I think might be pretty good. So I'm going to see if I can download this, and I'm going to stick this on the desktop. All right. And I think I'm going to go ahead and keep that open. But all right, so all right, I think we're good to go here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be working in Adobe Illustrator, which is sort of the industry standard for creating things like logos. And what I'm going to be doing is pulling that reference image in as something that I'm going to be drawing over. So I'm actually going to place the image in. Okay, and this is a really, really good, nice, large image. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be trying to basically pull in necessary and unnecessary detail from this image into my, my document here. And so I'm going to pull out a couple palettes that are going to help me out. Stroke palette's going to be beneficial here. I'm going to need my color palette. Also going to need some type later on. So I'm going to pull up my type palette here. And thank you guys for picking something that makes sense. So crocodile dental. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I need to translate this image into basic forms. And there's a lot of different methods to do that. You can take it into Photoshop and you can manipulate it and change contrast and stuff like that. But what I like to do is sort of like, and what I try to teach students is sort of being looking at these images and sort of making sense of like necessary and unnecessary detail. When we look at this image, it's pretty detailed. There's a lot of scales, there's a lot of dots. I'm not really concerned with that. What I really want to concentrate is basically sort of the overall form, and then also the some of the other detail, like not necessarily drawing every single tooth. You know, the eye is going to be important. Some of the dark to light when you're looking at the head and sort of how it's dark on the top and sort of light on the bottom. I'm going to sort of showcase that, and then I might try to kind of pull some colors from the actual image itself. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up a layer. That was my other palette I needed. And I'm going to be calling this one reference photo, or just reference rather, okay? And then I'm going to create another layer, and this is going to be my artwork. Okay, and I'm going to lock that reference layer because I don't want that moving around as I'm trying to draw it, okay? So there's there's a couple different methods of drawing objects and a couple different tools that can be used. There's a pen and pencil tool, which I'm going to actually be demonstrating here. Pen tool is a little bit more mechanical. Pencil tool is something where you can actually really draw it really free form. And it's a little bit difficult with this. There is a tablet here. It's a little bit difficult with the mouse, but I'm not really concerned with like super, super crisp accuracy. I just want to get the gist of this overall form down, okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and begin. Again, I'm not going to worry about all these scales. I hope that if you chose this one, you weren't hoping that I would draw all those scales. I hope you're not going to be strangely disappointed in this, but we'll see what happens. So I'm just going to do my best here and start sort of trying to draw this image. So I'm going to pick my pencil tool. Actually, I think I'm going to go ahead and start with the pen tool in this one since I've got larger images. Pen tool is really good for like larger shapes and sort of going around those. Pencil tool to me is a little bit better for finer detail. So I'm going to sort of start with the pen tool. And I'm going to focus on the head. And what's really good about this crocodile is he's sort of got this defined place where the head is. We see a little bit of the neck up here, and I'm going to have to sort of improvise how that happens. I can sort of think about how I've seen those alligator heads in gift stores. When you go down south and you go to you know, like a souvenir store, they always have these little alligator heads, and sort of where that's actually done. So I'm going to sort of stick to that one, okay? All right, so I'm going to go in here and start drawing some shapes. And I call this the click and drag method. So what we're doing is we're drawing the form, and then I'm hitting a click and drag method here to sort of create some curves. And you can see that my object is starting to get obscured, so I'm going to click and switch my fill and stroke. And this detail is going to be, the detail in the teeth is going to be sort of important. So I'm going to be sort of using this to sort of imply what's happening there. One thing that I want to kind of go back to is something that Robert Bean sort of talked about that I'm not really using here that would probably be beneficial to me is sketches. Now, we really focus on the idea of sketching in class. We don't want students to get anywhere near the computer until they've actually sat there and sketched it out and sort of worked out what they're going to do with the form and you know, how they're going to approach it, what angle they're going to be using and so forth. And so we don't want anybody doing anything until they've actually sort of sketched things out. And then if the sketch is detailed enough, then they don't have to worry about, they'll have all that stuff sort of worked out in the beginning, okay? All right, so the sketch is very important, although here I'm not really necessarily using that. So you can see there's a little bit of, this is sort of a rough thing, but it's all right. I'm going to be able to refine it. I'm going to make it a cyan color so I can actually see it a little bit better. And you know, my little teeth down here are not necessarily all that great. But again, this demo is just sort of about translation from one thing to another. Now I'm going to get my pencil tool and sort of kind of go over some of these areas, and I can sort of refine the way the shape of the outline there. All right. So my next thing is to sort of figure out the other stuff that I'm going to do, and I'm going to go in here. The teeth are going to be tough, but I'm just going to sort of pick and choose which ones I'm actually going to do, and I'm not going to be doing all of them. I could sort of indicate that the idea that this is sort of this alligator that's sort of missing some of its teeth, and you know, you would go to the dentist to get replacement teeth or get some things fixed. So I'm not going to worry about a tremendous amount. I'm just going to sort of pick and choose which ones to do. And just going in here and sort of drawing the shapes with the pencil tool. And I'm just doing everything outlined in blue, and I'm just going to sort of like do one every once in a while. And sort of just refining the shapes a little bit, and you see that sometimes it doesn't do it right away and I have to work on it a little bit. And I'm just going to sort of alternate these a little bit. Used to working on a Mac, so here the PC is going to be an interesting thing. All right, we're just going to go in here and do a couple more. All right, so we sort of addressed the teeth there, okay? All right, so my next thing is to try to get some more of that detail in the eye. So I'm going to come up here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for, what I like to tell students is sort of look for areas that are sort of similar. This one's got quite a bit of some dark shadows and different things like that, so I'm actually going to be combining some shapes together. So I'm going to come in here to the eye, and
Someone's asking if using this picture creates a copyright issue.
that is a really good point. Yes, that's a very good point. So one of the things that that I talk to students about is that we're sort of in a good way, because in research and being a student in school and doing research, we're sort of okay to use images like this. But obviously in the real world, if I was doing this for a client, I will try to find royalty-free or public domain domain images first, right off the bat. I did sort of a quick one and didn't really talk about that on this one. That's sort of the first thing that I'll do, is try to find things that are actually public domain or free, and then work from those. And if I can't, usually what I try to do is resort to the client and say, like, look, we need to buy a stock photo to reference on this. It depends on how much it's going to be referenced. I mean, some situations, since I'm sort of drawing this realistically, we would want to purchase this picture and have it within our, to have it actually professionally, so that we wouldn't have to worry about any kind of copyright issues. But yeah, that's a really, really great point, something that has to be addressed. But how much is a stock photo? They range, sometimes they're $10, they can be up to several thousand. When you get into things like celebrities and important figures, and you're trying to buy things from like Getty Images, they can be in the thousands of dollars. But there's really small places that you can, there's actually free stock photography, unsplashed pixels. There's also like Adobe Stock, which actually charges you a monthly subscription fee of $30, and you can download 10 images. They range from anywhere from like $1 to $10 up to several thousand. Yeah, all right. And my clients will come to me and say that they want to purchase stock photos, and I'm like, okay, be ready for that expense, okay? All right, so one thing I'm going to do here with this one is I've got that whole upper area of the head, and I want to make that all dark. And so I've defined over here where the eye is going to be, and I'm going to go ahead and make that black right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and define this kind of darker area across the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow this shape that I've drawn across the top and add it to it. So I'm going to copy this. This is something I try to teach my students, and it's a little bit difficult for them to grasp, but they're actually, taking an image, and so what I did is I copied and pasted that whole outline, and now I'm going to come in here and sort of pick a point right about here, and then another one about here. And so what I've done is I've scissored and broken that up, and then I'm going to delete that bottom section. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this other one and just continue that shape, and we'll see in a minute why that happens.
Kevin, are you using a mouse or a tablet?
I am using a mouse, and it's a PC mouse, and it's a little bit tough, but yeah, I'm definitely using a mouse. The tablet, I'm sort of a little bit old school. I like to do the tablet for really, really free-form illustrations, but for things like logos and stuff like that, I sort of resort to the mouse, and I'm fairly comfortable with it.
What kind of tablet do you recommend for beginners?
What kind of what, I'm sorry?
What kind of tablet do you recommend for beginners?
Oh, beginners. I'm an Apple guy, so I sort of say make the extra expense and go ahead and go with an iPad. But I can't really speak for everybody. That's the one that, as far as like a full-fledged tablet, Wacom, W-A-C-O-M, that's how I pronounced it, makes something called a Bamboo, and they make something called Cintiqs. Bamboos are usually the cheaper ones, the less expensive ones that are really, really great and really, really accurate. The Cintiqs are really expensive, high-end, multiple pressures with the brush to sort of mimic brush detail. But the Bamboo, if you check that out, some of the lower-end Wacom tablets are really, really good. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's copy and paste this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow another shape because I want to do the mouth. This is actually a tough image you guys picked. So we're going to see what we can do with it. All right, so we're going to copy this again, and I'm going to paste it in place, put it right on top. And then what I'm going to do on this one is I'm actually just going to borrow this shape right here. All right, so we're going to get rid of that, and then we're going to sort of define the inside of the mouth. All right, so let's go in here. I'm not really worried about all the teeth. I'm going to sort of pick and choose. What I'm really trying to define right here is the mouth inside. So I've got a couple different sections here to sort of work with. All right, there's that. Then let's go in here. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sense there's a gap in here that I got to be sort of careful of, but there's also a situation where the mouth sort of joins up. Okay, so then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to define right here sort of the empty space. So I'm going to try to come in here and define the background of it. And I'm sort of, I'm going to kind of follow along the lines here, but I'm not going to worry about the teeth. I'm just going to be putting shapes in front and behind. So that was one of the important things about logo design, is that you're really working in shapes. And I'm fighting everything that I can to not add too much detail to this because of time frame, obviously, and just basically just simplicity of the form. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get right back to this point, and I'm going to sort of stop, okay? So now what we're going to see is we're going to see if this sort of works and makes sense. I'm going to put another little bit of detail right in here for this other little area that sort of represents where the eye is. And I think I'm almost done with this photo. We'll see. All right. Okay, so let's back out a little bit and let's see what's happening. And let's come in here and let's start coloring in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just working with black and white right now. I'm not really concerned with full color. And so you can see that on this one I actually colored it in black. And so now what I'm going to do is come in here and just do some grayscale. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to color the whole thing in, actually, you know what? I've got this bottom layer too that I got to address. So let me copy that one and paste it. So there's going to be a couple different levels of detail in this. Hopefully it's not going to be too much. But let's go ahead and address this, for lack of a better term, his chin. All right, and let's just pick up that shape. Getting pretty close here. This is looking okay. Like I said, this is a tough one. Probably, what I might want to do is go in there and completely do all the teeth, but I'm not going to. All right, so let's convert this thing into grayscale, and let's just do some looking at some grayscale here, just to sort of look at placement. Okay, let's take this and let's move it to the back. All right, now I got to make sure what's going to be black in there. Okay, let's make this black. All right, let's make this one a little bit darker. What I can do is sort of look at the reference video photo here. So that one's actually going to be fairly dark, but not black. We do. Actually, Dusty has, within the illustration department, he's actually purchased a whole series of them, I think about maybe around 20. And so we have, there's sort of these smaller versions of Cintiqs that are really, really great. I think they're about 13-inch, and those are available for students to use, yes. And we have students that request them in my department, and I will definitely go down and pick them up for them if they see the need to use them, okay? All right, let's see. Oh, okay. Can you ask to repeat the question? Can you repeat the question, please? Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, I got you. Okay, all right. You don't have to repeat the question. All right, so now we're going to go in here and address the teeth, and they're sort of obscured by the other artwork, so let's get those sent to back. Now we can see these sort of gnarly teeth coming in here. All right, and let's just go with white on those. Let's see, because we want to sort of allude that this is sort of a dentist, and sort of do that. Okay, so now we've got a couple issues in here. I'm sort of got some weird definition going on, especially with these teeth right here. So I'm going to come in here and sort of work on these guys a little bit. And let's sort of make this one sort of follow along that line. And then this one right here, what we're going to do is we're just going to sort of let these guys kind of follow along this line. And this one, this is sort of my own addition to this. This, like I said, this is a really tough one. I should have gone with the cat. All right, and what I'm doing is I'm sort of just, this is sort of just an executive decision to sort of follow along with these things right here. Now, I sort of got, I got something weird I got to address because I had this sort of, the background that's supposed to be coming through. We're supposed to be able to see that. So let's see where that is. There's something on here that I think I have to knock out, but we're getting close. All right, so that is this right here. And so what I want to do is, let's come in here and see what's going on with that. So this is this whole sort of line. So let's come in here, and what I'm going to do is, since this is sort of obscured, I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to do this so I can actually see what's behind it. And then I can come in here and sort of see if I can figure out where that shape is. There it is. All right, so now we sort of got that opening right there, okay? This is really gnarly looking, all right? So I'm gonna make a couple of other executive decisions here on this logo, and I'm going to actually take this area and sort of round it out like that. And then I'm going to, got a couple little corrections right in here to make for this one. And let's see, like this. And so this is, you know, this is a tough thing to do within 30 minutes time. So, but the main gist of it is trying to basically sort of pick out necessary and unnecessary detail. And you can see that I can't really see that tooth right there because this is the wide of the background and then the wide of the front. As we zoom out, we sort of get a better indication about what it looks like from that point right there. The other thing that we need to look at is sort of how that, how the shadows are sort of defined. This gray is sort of not necessarily accurate right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take it, let's see, let's get this other shape. And let's sort of move this back over here and see what that looks like. Okay, that might look a little bit better. All right, I think we're getting there. All right, okay, all right. So let's take this out and let's start sort of trying to address the color. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock this layer and I'm going to bring this over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of pick a lighter color first, and I'm going to go with this sort of tan from the actual picture. And then what I'm going to do is sort of work from that color to make things a little bit darker. And we're sort of going for local color here, something that's a little bit more you know, realistic to the crocodile. And then I'm going to take this one and I'm going to sample that. And I'm just going to go in here, and all I'm doing is just adding a little bit of black, otherwise known as the key color here, to the shape. And the other color makes it a little bit more interesting to look at rather than just the black and white. And then we're going to go in about 75. This is actually pretty dark, so let's go in about 85% or so. And then that just starts looking black, so let's back that off a little bit. Let's go to about 80%, all right? And then we'll do the same thing for these two areas right here, okay? All right, so nothing terribly, this isn't a very whimsical photo. I'd probably want to go with a little bit more whimsy, but for the purposes of this demo, we need to sort of like get this thing sort of squared away, okay? Okay, so basically the simplicity of it is starting to sort of come through. The adaptability is going to be the fact that it's a very simple color. It's only like a couple colors, which is going to be a lot less expensive to print. If these are all shades of the same brown, it's going to be even cheaper to print. And so that's good for us. And so now what I want to do is, this is a little thing that I like to do to sort of kind of unify the whole image. And I do what's called a unite. And so I convert this whole thing into a shape. And then I'm going to put a slight halo around it to make it a little bit more, to actually kind of unite the thing a little bit more. So as far as the color, let's just try to use something that's a little bit more of a brighter color, something like that, and let's put a stroke on it and make sure that that stroke is the same color, and we're going to put it in there, and then we're going to move it to the back, and then I'm going to make that stroke a little bit thicker. Okay, so something like this to sort of unite it. Now it's not very it's not working terribly well because the color of it's not that much different. So let's just make it black and see what that happens. That might be able to allow us to sort of bring in a little bit more color. Okay, so this little outline here sort of unifies the image a little bit better, okay? And so my last thing sort of think about is how this thing is going to actually type with, how this thing is actually going to pair with type. And so let's see what we got here. Everything's locked, so let's unlock that layer. Let me see if I can find it. Make sure that that's unlocked. There it is. And let's get this thing paired with type. All right, so we're going to call this one Smiling Croc Dental Solutions. And so I've already sort of got a typeface in mind, but the main thing here is that we want to sort of concentrate on the idea of making this thing, the type to image ratio correct, okay? So Smiling Croc is our primary name there, and then I know that I have a typeface that I downloaded called Montserrat, and Montserrat is a really, really dependable typeface that I like to use, and I'm going to actually provide a little bit of variation between the two by doing a light color and an italic color, so that, a light color and then a light typeface and a bold typeface to add a little bit more contrast in that. And so here is just sort of this basic idea that we see Smiling Croc right off the bat, and then we see the dental solutions underneath it, okay? We've got this idea. We could also do it in a circular format. We could do it to the left. We could do it to the right. There's several different choices here, but the thing about this one is the fact that it's a horizontal icon. You don't want to really put type to next to it because it's going to make the thing really horizontal. And if you think about adaptability, you want to sort of think about this thing being in sort of like a rectangle shape or a square shape, roughly, so that it actually can be placed in different elements and it's not too wide or too tall and creates all this sort of unnatural negative space. And so something like this is going to make it a little bit more adaptable in that sense, okay? All right, so let's go in here and add, this is sort of a boring color palette, but it's a crocodile and I'm trying to go with sort of local color there, the actual color of the crocodile. And so I'm going to actually come in here and mimic, copy some of the colors in here to add a little bit more visual interest. I could potentially go in there through further research is to do add in some blues and different things like that. But sort of for the purposes of this, I think that I'm probably okay. And so this is sort of where we end up, is something like this. And what I will normally do is provide several different formats for clients to use. Come in there and give them black and white versions. I will give them grayscale versions, and I'll also give them a reverse version. And so that they have several different things that they can work with and use for their client usage. And so let's go in there and make that stroke a little bit bigger, and let's go ahead and round off some corners. And I think we're sort of okay. I think we're in pretty good shape there. But so that's sort of the process. Like I said, there's a lot more to do. I'm not really 100% sure about the teeth. I do like sort of the top. I love the eyes, and I like the sort of color, and I like the halo around that. That's an Alphonse Mucha reference that I pulled in. That is a famous Czechoslovakian artist that did these halos around, these sort of outlines around figures to sort of help them stand off from the background. And so what this really is about is just sort of that idea about trying to take a visual, simplify it down to very, very basic forms. This is obviously not really great for a dentist, the direct picture of the crocodile, but we wanted something that is a simplification of that picture. And so that's sort of what this is about. So that's pretty much what I have. I wonder if you guys had any kind of questions or anything for me. I'd be happy to answer it. And did I get my degree in graphic design? My undergraduate was in graphic design and illustration. I actually did a lot more illustrating than I did graphic design work, but it was a combination of those two, and I actually received that here. So that is my original undergraduate. I was going to be a drawing major, and then I discovered the Macintosh and said, nope, I'm going to do graphic design. And then I went to graduate school, and that was an actual graphic design. That was an MFA in art with a graphic design emphasis. So everything has been graphic design through and through. Yeah, absolutely. What other classes do I teach besides graphic design? I teach intro to graphic design, typography, print design, and package design, as well as web design and course upper level special topic courses. So I pretty much cover the whole thing here at the department. So, all right. Any more questions at all? Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. The next session coming up is going to be just as much fun. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Figure drawing pretty much feeds into everything that any student could do in any program in the school. You need figure drawing, you need color theory, composition, perspective. It just so happens that figure drawing and painting do all of those things. The painting area in this building has serious advantages to students because it is built for artists. The lighting here is adjustable. All our windows in here are north facing, and each room is vented individually to prevent any fumes or anything like that, so it's completely safe. If a student were to go into graphic design, painting, drawing in general, you'll use everything that we teach in figure drawing and painting. How to handle paint, how to apply paint, the chemistry of the whole process. They all feed into each other. The time and money spent going to UA Little Rock is definitely worth it. The students can expect to get a very useful and good education here at UA Little Rock. Hello everyone. Thanks for joining me for my painting demonstration. As the intro video showed, I'm the painting and drawing instructor here at UA Little Rock. Today I'm going to do a little still life painting demonstration for you, but the subject of today's talk is going to be mostly about the myth of talent. Okay? I'm going to ask you guys to please chime in and ask questions throughout the video. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. Okay? Before we get started with this painting, I'd like to show you my little setup here. I've cheated a little bit, and I've mixed a lot of my own paints already. And what I've got here is my mixture of paints, and I've got a little liquid here. This is a medium you add to the paint to make it a little more slippery, and it also helps it to dry a little faster. I'm using some regular synthetic sable brushes, nothing too fancy. And before I get started, I also want to say that, like, the common misconception with art and painting is that you have to be talented to do it. And so today I'm going to show you through my process that you do not have to be talented and that anyone can do it if you want to. All right? But a few things you need to learn how to paint is a good instructor like myself, and you need a good process. Okay? It's a process just like anything else. Don't let it intimidate you. The problem with painting, and painting a scene like we have here today, is that yes, it's just a simple pot and a plastic apple on a blanket. But honestly, that's a really complex thing to have to paint, to sit down and paint. However, in order to simplify this stuff so that it's not so complex, you need to break this thing down into basic shapes, into a basic value plan. And the value plan, actually values are darks and lights, basically. And the value plan we have here is our scene lit with a single light source, okay? And it's going to work just like this simple sphere here that I have as an example. In other words, this scene will have the same value structure as this sphere here, only it'll have color, right? So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And another way to simplify this scene is to, as far as process, is to start with the darks first. So I'm going to start with the darks in this vase first. Nothing too fancy here. We're just going to put these values in here like they belonged in the first place. A what?
A base or a splash.
A splash? What's a splash? Did I use a base? I don't know. Ask them to repeat the question. Oh, basically what I'm working on here. Oh, okay, yeah, the background. So I went ahead and drew the picture out because you can't make a good painting out of a bad drawing. You always have to have a good drawing first. So don't underestimate drawing classes in the beginning. But what I have here is just a basic masonite panel, okay, that's gessoed on the front. Gesso is the thing that makes it white and separates your paint from the surface. And then I stained the canvas with an acrylic, a thin acrylic. And what that does is it establishes a mid-tone, okay? And that's really important because painting is a comparative process. And if I started out with a white canvas, which you could do, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but it really helps the comparative process if you start with a toned canvas. Now, if you'll notice, I don't do a whole lot of blending in the beginning. That's a common mistake that a lot of beginners painting, beginning painters make, is that they start blending too early. And what that does, if you do it too early, is kind of destroys all that separation that you were working for earlier. All right, now I'm going to move on to the darks in the apple. Now at first this is going to look really carved with a lot of planes and stuff, but don't worry about that in the beginning is my recommendation. Because you can go back and blend and make everything look soft later on. All right, now I'm going to get into the surrounding area. I wonder how many people we got watching, do we know? All right, now I'm going to move on to the background. This actually belongs to the dark portion of the painting. Now, as I move along, you'll slowly see this thing come together. That's another thing I teach my students often. It's something I have to reiterate often is trust the process. I know it's hard to trust it if you've only done it a couple of times, but the more you do it, the more you learn to trust it. All right, now we're going to move up the value scale a little bit. We've simplified already by doing the darks first on most of our items here. And now we can start moving up the value scale a little bit. And forgive my speed here. I'm trying to hurry up so that I finish within a 30-minute window. I think I can do it. You think I can do it? Good. Yes, I've been interested in painting my entire life. You know, typical story. I loved it when I was little. But what actually got me started interested in painting, funny enough, was looking at my father's album covers. He had a stack of album covers that filled the room, you know, and so he let me sit and just be mesmerized over them for hours at a time. And, you know, I don't know how album covers are these days, but back then they were full of art and just graphic design, illustration, and all kinds of cool stuff. So that kept me busy when I was little, and that's actually made me want to decide to become an artist, because I wanted to do art like that. But yeah, I guess what got me interested in painting other than that is sci-fi and fantasy illustration. I've always been really into that stuff, and it just so happened that the fantasy illustrators that I was into were all traditional painters. For still objects, I prefer oil paint in almost everything. I mean, there's a few good uses for acrylic paint, but most of the time oil paint is a better answer because it's malleable. It doesn't dry right away. It gives you a little time to move stuff around. And trust me, anytime I sit down to paint, I'm going to want to move stuff around. For my BFA to learn to paint, I went to the Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design in Colorado, in Denver. And I mean, I mostly learned to paint in those places, but I always tell everyone that, you know, a good work ethic will teach you to paint as good as anything else. And I had some really good instructors there too. All right, so I'm going to move up the value scale a little bit with this pot. And this, I'll emphasize again that, you know, controlling the order in which you add values to the painting really helps determine whether it's going to be successful or not. Can I paint other objects too? Yes, absolutely. The reason why I chose this very simple setup today was because I was confident in the fact that I could finish it within a short time frame. If you use simplified shapes, if you are aware of how to simplify the scene, you can paint anything you want. For blending color, yes, actually, I'm very strict about that in my classes, because what you don't want to do, and I'll demonstrate this right here in this spot, what you don't want to do is blend by just sweeping the brush across areas, okay? You want to choose where to blend very locally. You don't want to move it around too much. So in other words, if on that pot over there, I have a soft transition from dark to light right here, I don't want to go in and just start smudging stuff around. What I like to do is just kind of ride the edge like that. Maybe move the brush around a little bit and just tease little areas to blend. And I never deviate from the still life over here. I'm constantly looking over there to see what needs to be done. The wrong thing to do is to go in and try to make this stuff up as you go. That's not how it works. There are a few people in the world who can paint without using a setup, or, you know, they can paint without working from any reference at all, but those people are really rare and have probably had a lot of practice. My best what? Oh, That's a tough one to answer because I'm not sure what my best work of art is. Normally it doesn't take me that long. The things that I'm most pleased with in my art practice usually are things that don't take a super long time to do. Because I don't know if this counts for other artists, but for me, the more I have to think about it and fuss about it, the less I like it. See, already with just a little bit of stuff that I've done and my willingness to simplify this thing, it's already starting to take on a three-dimensional look, which is exactly what we want. All right, now I'm going to move on to our apple and work on the lighter values there. And honestly, there's not a big difference in how you paint like cool stuff like dragons and fairies and how you paint something traditional like this. It's all the same process and the same lighting knowledge. So if you like stuff like, fairies and anime and sci-fi stuff, don't let this traditional stuff discourage you, because most of the people that do art like that learn to do things like that by doing things like this. How are we doing on time, you guys? I have no idea where I'm at. About 15 minutes? 13, so we're about halfway, okay. Well, I'm doing a little better on time than I thought. I may actually get done with this thing. I think it's worth mentioning too, because a lot of people think detail is what makes a good painting, or the ability to do detail is what makes a good painter, and that could not be further from the truth. It's better for a painter to learn to simplify and to do the large elements than it is to do detail. Now, I'm not knocking on detail. You need to learn detail, but I can do more with less detail than with more detail. It's not hard at all. It hasn't really interfered with my teaching abilities or my ability to teach. We are sure to wear masks, and we're sure to stay within 6 feet of each other, and that's pretty much all the protocols that we really need to follow. Now, we actually sterilize the rooms and stuff too. It took me a while. It took a lot. It was a lot of work for me to learn to paint. It really was. But mainly because I overcomplicated the process in the beginning. If I would have had teachers and instructors that showed me how to simplify, sooner than what I did, I would have caught on a lot quicker. Simplification is the key. Okay. So if you guys have any questions, no matter how weird you might think they are, I'll answer it. My favorite type of painting is very loose and very painterly oil painting. That's my favorite. And I think probably to unpack that a little more, I really like figurative and portrait paintings. You know, those types of works really express human emotion in a way that clicks with me. I do want to paint for the rest of my life. I'd be quite happy if I could paint for the rest of my life, honestly. Yeah, it's very gratifying. I love painting. One reason is because it's very zen, it's very meditative. You get yourself in a mode, in the zone, some people say, of painting, and you're there, and it's a very pleasurable state of mind to be in. Have I taught? You know, it's a weird. I have to answer that in a weird way because I was teaching actually before I taught here at UA Little Rock. What got me into wanting to teach was me offering private lessons in North Louisiana for people who wanted to learn to paint. And after a while of doing it, I just kind of found that I really enjoyed showing people what I knew about painting. And I taught when I was in grad school a little bit as a student instructor. And then once I graduated, I got right into teaching at a university level. What do I do when I have no inspiration? Well, that question kind of answered itself because if I find I have kind of artist block and I'm not inspired, I look at my favorite artists for inspiration, and it always works. I'll just go to like Pinterest or something and start flipping through images, and I get fired up about it. My favorite artist right now, let me think. My favorite artist right now is a contemporary figurative and landscape painting artist named Jeremy Mann. His last name is spelled M-A-N-N. Very inspiring stuff. Oh. Yeah, so texture in oil painting is often referred to as impasto. And basically all you have to do to add texture to a painting is just paint really thick with a brush. And if that doesn't satisfy you and you want it to be even thicker, use a palette knife. Palette knife like this. And you can just get it and scoop the paint up like that and lay it on like cake icing. You can get it as thickly as you want. And funny thing enough, as long as you follow these rules, you can still make things look three-dimensional even though you're painting thickly. But I prefer textured, thick painting. You know, I've got the attitude of like, you know, I'm not ashamed of the fact that it's a painting. I don't want it to look like a photograph. I want it to look like a painting. And the best way to do that is paint on thick and just let that paint stand off the canvas. So now I'm going to go in after I've already put all the basic values and things in and start adding highlights. This is where the really bright stuff starts coming in. I've gotten in the habit of painting every day. I paint every day. Just because I enjoy it so much. And Instagram keeps me honest. I post on Instagram a lot, so if I don't have anything new to post, that means I need to paint, and usually that's every day. I do. I don't have it quite up and running just yet. I will pretty soon, though. That's up and coming. All right, we need some highlights in our apple. Rickatroid, Rickatroid. We can be friends forever if you go in and follow me on Instagram. And I actually do quite a lot of different kinds of art. I've got a landscape series that I do. I do some figurative works. I do still lives. Anything I can get my hands on, I'll usually try it out. Okay. Let's see here. What do I need to do to this thing? Add this. How much time we got left? 5 to 10? Okay. I got a few more minutes. So if you guys have any final questions for me, I'm here for you. If you have any further questions after today's video, my email address is rwsikes@ualr.edu. I'll answer any questions you have regarding painting, school. Don't be shy. I went to illustration school to learn to be an illustrator at the Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design. You don't have to move to Colorado, though, to learn to paint. You can learn to paint here. How'd that amp up here? I was actually offered a teaching position here at UA Little Rock, and that's what brought me here. Can I teach them how to paint like me? I would love to teach them how to paint like me. That's what I do. Get in touch with me via email, and I'll do what I can. So you can see that with just a little bit of simplification and some knowledge on how to use paint, I'm able to create a somewhat satisfactory 3D illusion on a two-dimensional surface. I'm kind of pleased with it. I mean, it's not perfect, but imagine what you could do with something like this if you had more time. In other words, I'll say it like this, you know, look how much I was able to accomplish in such a short period of time. And I would not be able to do that unless I knew how to simplify the scene with a basic plan like that. And actually in my Painting 1 class, I'll have all my students paint this exactly the way they see it so that they can get used to translating real life with that basic plan in mind. Chaos. What aspects of painting? You know, honestly, as far as, you know, what I do as a painter, I like the way painting looks. I mean, I teach drawing and stuff too, and that stuff is equally as important. But painting's my favorite because I love the end results of painting and how they look. It's so rewarding to step back and, you know, with the use of color and values and everything and how it all comes together at the end. I mean, I guess it's like a personal thing, but painting's my favorite for that. You okay for a while? Okay. Okay. So if there's anything that I would prefer you take away from what we've learned today, it's that you do not have to be talented in order to achieve art like this. Anybody can do it. But again, you need a good plan, you need a good process, and you need a good teacher like myself. I'd be glad to send you some images of my work, or you could just get them off of Instagram because most of my stuff is there. If you want to come to the school, because a lot of my work is here spread around the classroom, you're welcome to come and I'll give you a tour of the room. And then we can talk about me giving you one of my paintings. Maybe. Depends on which one you like. Okay. So it looks like we're going to wrap up here pretty quick. If you guys have any questions for me specifically, again, my email is rwsikes@ualr.edu. And my Instagram handle is Rickatroid, that's Rickatroid. We about done? I can tell them goodbye. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining me. I hope this turned out okay, and I hope it looks good on camera. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
I'm very passionate about this place because it's something I've had this vision about for probably the last 10 years. And to come up with this fantastic facility that's just a beautiful art school in Little Rock. With the approach to our program, working through the foundations and then becoming more and more knowledgeable about their fields, whether it's art history, art education, studio arts, the students become more and more proficient in their discipline. They start to make connections outside of the department. Faculty help put them together with career opportunities to the point where they come out as an expert in their field. With the Windgate Center of Art Plus Design, we've been able to create the private art school experience at a public school cost.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Whitney Kellyott, and I work in the admissions office here at UA Little Rock. So I hope you've seen some of the fabulous talent we have to offer here at UA Little Rock, an amazing facility in our new Art Plus Design building. So that next step is, if you're interested, we want to get you on campus, kind of walk around, get your feet on the ground, or visit us virtually as well. So we offer those in-person tours and virtual tours. You can register for those at ualr.edu/tour. So whether you're a freshman through senior, come on, check us out. Now, talking specifically to my seniors right now, if you want to pursue an art degree here or one of our other 100 degrees programs that we have to offer, we need you to apply for admission. And you can do that for free. So that link to apply is apply.ualr.edu, and you're going to use a promo code Trojan2021. So that's all caps, no spaces, TROJAN 2021 to start that application process for free. So like I said, my name's Whitney. I work in the admissions office. Every high school in Arkansas has an admission representative. So Parkview and Metro, I'm looking at you. Let's work together and go through that process. Other high schools representative, you have that admission representative. Come check us out, apply, and we want to give you some scholarship opportunities. So we have our merit scholarships. Those are going to be awarded to you just for applying for admission. I know COVID has really changed a lot of your plans your senior year. Part of that was eliminated some of those ACT test dates. So to compromise, we have eliminated our ACT score breakdown. So all you need now is a 20 composite score, and then pair that with a GPA of a 3.0 to a 4.0 to get you between $2,000 and $10,000 per year. And let's not stop there. Let's stack a mentorship program on top of that. So we have STEM scholarships, so if you want to maybe minor into science, pair that with your art degree. If you want to be in our leadership corps, so be involved, volunteer, just be an active agent on our college campus. Maybe you're an E Scholar, or maybe you want to be one of our highly selective Donaghy Scholars, get some more money. And then also we have our new need-based scholarship. Earlier in the spring, UA Little Rock received an unprecedented $25 million donation. That's right, $25 million. That's earmarked for need-based scholarships. So we just need you guys to get admitted, have a FAFSA on files so that we can see you're Pell Grant eligible. And y'all, UA Little Rock is going to finish covering your balance after all your other financial aid pays. So that's your tuition, your fees, your housing, your meal plan. If you have leftover balance, Trojan Strong is going to take that balance to zero. So I think this year has really shown us that it's more important than ever to have options on the table. We want UA Little Rock to be a strong option for you. Your admission representative wants to guide you through that process, maximize those financial aid offers. I do want to point out, hopefully somewhere in your school, either in person or electronically, you can access our admission representative and scholarship information. So like I said, get those scholarships, stack them together, and it doesn't stop at institutional dollars. I'm gonna hand it over to Andy to tell you more scholarship opportunities.
Great. So once again, I'm Andy Tompkins, the Art Outreach Specialist. That is a great segue, Whitney. Thank you so much. We wanted to make you guys aware of the scholarships that we have for the university and within our department. The department scholarship process for us opens on December 1st and closes on March 1st. You'll find details about that on our website. You'll need to submit an electronic portfolio for review, but don't let that stop you from the process, because Professor Kevin Cates that you met earlier, he's done a really short video for you that shows exactly step by step how that process works, and it's so easy. We also wanted to let you know that we're fortunate to have several generous donors for our scholarship program. And just to give you an idea, last year in 2019, we were able to award 90 of our art majors over $111,000 in scholarship money, which is really amazing. So the scholarship ranged anywhere from about $250 to even a few that had $7,500. So it really is to your benefit to apply, and we hope that you'll do that. Art teachers, I wanted to remind you to please be sure to get your students' email addresses to me so that we can continue to get information to them. And then everyone else, we wanted to remind you that this video has been recorded and you can find it on our YouTube channel. Be sure to look that up and subscribe to our channel at Windgate Center of Art and Design. And we also want to thank again our very generous sponsor, the Windgate Foundation, and we especially want to thank you for joining us today for the UA Little Rock Department of Art and Design artSpark 2.0. We hope you have a good weekend, and we hope to see you this spring for the next artSpark. Thank you.